Hey, Adam.
What's up, Pete?
Are you ready?
For what?
Well, just listening to the greatest Bill Evans album of all time.
Oh, Waltz for Debbie.
No.
Portrait in Jazz.
Nope.
Sunday at the Village Vanguard.
Still no.
Undercurrent.
No.
Conversations with Myself.
No. Let's just, you'll hear it.
Okay.
Huh? Oh.
I'm Adam Manis.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Music Explored.
Explored brought to you today by Open Studio. Go to openstudiojazz.com for all your jazz lessons. This was a quick one, but it's
You kind of tempered it a little bit.
Kind of tempered it.
I like that.
So, Peter, is it the Bill Evans, Tony Bennett album? Is it?
Okay, are you trying to say there's a lot of great Bill Evans albums? Because I would agree with that.
There's a lot. I'm just curious what we're listening to today.
Well, it always comes back to that interesting thing of like, I guess I get caught up I get hung up in the difference between my favorite or an album that I love versus the greatest. Because I always think when I say the greatest, I mean the greatest to me.
Yeah.
I'm humbly offering that as my opinion. You know, it's not that it's the only great one. I mean, how can you ever say one is the greatest?
That's what's so great about the greatest. It's completely subjective.
Yes.
And we all feel like our favorite. I mean, how many times have I said Secrets is the greatest, not only the greatest Herbie Hancock album, but the greatest album of the 1970s?
Right.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Although last time we listened to it, you seemed like you retreated just slightly.
Again, this is the thing about the greatest. That can change even within you over time, where when I was 25, you couldn't convince me that Secrets wasn't the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Right.
And I've since grown since then.
Well, I think too with this, what's interesting with Bill Evans, I mean, obviously one of the most beloved musicians.
Is it Evans or Levins?
Bill Evans. Bill Evans. It's like one word, right? You know, this is a little bit of an underdog, a little foreshadowing.
This is an underdog.
It's an underdog pick.
Yeah.
And not to me, because I listen to this record a lot. You know, whenever we encounter music, especially kind of the cultural phenomenon of an album, at least the way it used to be presented, our initial interaction with it, I think, is such a special thing. Kind of like when if you go to an art museum and you encounter some art that you come back to later in your life, maybe many times, maybe every week, you know, or maybe every year. And, you know, how have you grown? What's happened in your life? The art stays the same, but how you're looking at it changes. But it's also sort of this cultural touch point for you as you walk through life. And so this album's super interesting to me from that standpoint, because it's probably the Bill Evans album, not to personalize this even more, that I've listened to the most and kind of studied and encountered early on. But yes, it's not known as his greatest album.
But I do think,
and objectively, it probably isn't.
Well, it's possibly his most underrated album.
Yeah, maybe.
I think the thing that
it might be his most interesting album in a way, in that it's a little bit outside of the ordinary.
One of his more interesting albums.
Yeah,
and I think, and we'll get into this as we go, but you know, the question that I always have with this album is, it's like a non-canonical album. Like we think about Bill Evans' sound, we think about the trio with, you know, Scott LaFaro and Paul Motion. We think about that sound, like that interactive trio with brushes and the bass player doing some crazy stuff around what Bill's playing, right? This like group improvisation that's happening throughout. And this doesn't have that. This is a murderer's row of like tippers, essentially. We got Philly Joe, you got Percy Heath on bass, you got Jim Hall, and you got Freddie Hubbard, right?
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of that Bill Evans sound
that
I think you get in Waltz for Debbie and Portrait for Jazz and all of his classic, you know, albums, trio albums. And even his solo albums, The Conversation with Myself, the duo albums like with Jim Hall, Undercurrent, and
which was right around this time, like just a couple months after
the Tony Bennett album in the 70s, and those kinds of albums where he's really introspective. This is swinging Bill Evans, you know, with Philly Joe. It's a whole different vibe, and so
it's a little bit of a throwback, right?
Well, a little bit, but it, you know, we'll talk about that, and in context of Bill's career, where does this sit? I'm not surprised that this is your favorite album, because if I know anything about my boy Peter, Peter loves to swing.
Right.
Sue you.
Sue me. I love swing. But that's not to say that the classic Bill Evans trio, you know, I believe this was recorded, well, it was recorded after Scott LaFaro, you know, who tragically died very young after his death. So I have no idea like how how conscious Bill Evans was in terms of putting this together and this personnel. I know that this was kind of what they would call like a throw and go, thrown together personnel by the producer Orrin Keep News. But I don't. It doesn't sound like it's not a band. That's one of the amazing things about this record.
Again, Murderers Row. It's heavy hitters here.
It's heavy hitters. And then obviously a lot of them have played together at different times, but I don't think all of them had played together. And it's a great lineup. It obviously could have been a great band for many years, a la the Jazz Messengers or something like that. But I mean, I wonder for Bill Evans in terms of like, you know, that classic trio that he could have very well, Paul Motian, Scott LaFaro, played with for the rest of his life, probably would have been the plan, and not a bad trio at all to do that with.
Yeah.
But with that getting cut off and then him going in many different directions after
he had great trios after that too.
After.
But I think way more known for a trio musician, supporting vocalists even, than for this kind of pickup band. Riverside
it's
Records.
Like the greatest pickup band ever.
Yeah, it's incredible, you know. And some musicians were known for like pickup band albums like this, where it's like you go in with a sketch of what you might want to do, you get the right players together, and then you let the improvisation take over. Those are some of my favorite records.
Absolutely.
And this is one of those. And I think this is a really interesting record in Bill's discography, because you get to hear him in this context. It's almost like, you know, a mid-50s Miles Davis record without Miles, and with Freddie in there, which is a really interesting, and with guitar too, which is another Bill Evans staple that I'm so happy to hear the great Jim Hall. So let's put this in a little bit of cultural context. It was recorded in late 1962. It was released in June 1963. So when it was released, here were some of the things that were going on. The same month this was released, there was a young musician who released his first single. Little Stevie Wonder.
Ever heard of him?
Was 13 years old and released Fingertips, which would become his first hit album, his first hit record. It would be the first #1 that wasn't a studio recording, that was a live in-concert recording, Fingertips. And incredible document.
Great solo on that.
Yeah, great solo on that. The #1 movie at the box office was Cleopatra. With old Liz.
Was that Elizabeth Taylor?
Liz Taylor, yeah.
What husband was she on at that point? Am I allowed to ask? That was early on, right?
It was, well, that doesn't mean it wasn't. It was 3 or 4 probably.
Right.
One of the Burtons. Okay. The top TV show
Lamar.
was
No.
was the Beverly Hillbillies.
Now, how could that be? Because that was a hit TV show when I was a kid. I guess that was reruns.
It was reruns, man. And the president was JFK. So that's all the kind of like broad pop culture. There was also lots of political things happening.
Yeah.
But what I found when I was kind of like going through 1963, here's really what was, for this being a straight ahead jazz album, listen to this release schedule for 1963. Here are some of the top, and these isn't even all of them. These are just some of the big name albums that were released. #1, Jackie McLean, Let Freedom Ring.
Ooh.
Thelonious Monk, Monk's Dream. Joe Henderson, Page One. Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue. Yeah, the incredible Jimmy Smith, Back at the Chicken Shack. That's underrated. Sheila Jordan, Portrait of Sheila. Ike Quebec, Blue and Sentimental. That's underrated as well. Mingus, The Black Saint and the Sinner Lady.
One of his greatest albums.
My dad had this next one on vinyl. Stan Getz with guest artist Lorindo Amieta. Dexter Gordon, Our Man in Paris. That's one of my favorite albums ever.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman. How about that? Chico Hamilton, Passing Through. Money Jungle, Duke Ellington, Charles Mingus, Max Roach, Elvin Jones and Jimmy Garrison Sextet, Illumination. Dinah Washington, Back to the Blues. The Oscar Peterson Trio, Night Train. Nita Simone at Carnegie Hall. Rahsaan Roland Kirk, Reeds and Deeds. Bill Evans, Conversation with Myself, another classic Bill Evans. Ella Fitzgerald and Count Basie, Ella and Basie. Freddie Hubbard, Hubtones. All
Blue Note Records.
We're not even close to being finished.
We're just in
Peter.
January releases.
Yeah. Let's see here. Coltrane, Dakar, Coltrane Impressions, Miles Davis, 7 Steps to Heaven, Duke Ellington and John Coltrane,
record.
one of my favorite albums ever. Coltrane Ballads.
Wait, hold that thought.
Horace Silver, Silver Serenade. I'm not stopping.
No. I have a question that. So you're saying that in 1963, John Coltrane and Duke Ellington was released, and John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman.
Yeah, and John Coltrane Ballads.
And I mean, what?
Grant Green, Feelin' the Spirit, Thelonious Monk, Crisscross, Wes Montgomery, Boss Guitar, Bill Evans, Interplay. Herbie Hancock, My Point of View, Stanley Turrentine, Never Let Me Go, Lou Donaldson, The Natural Soul, McCoy Tyner, Knights of Ballads and Blues, underrated album.
Impulse.
Stan Getz and Louise Bonfa, Albert Eiler, My Name is Albert Eiler, and Bridget Bardot.
Are you sure?
Bridget Bardot. I'm just kidding.
Are you sure you're not looking at the whole 60s, my friend?
That's 1963. That's the best jazz albums of 1963, according to albumoftheyear.com.
Okay, maybe this album isn't that great now that I hear about all those.
There's a ton. I mean, this was, but that's an incredible. I mean, this is a golden age, obviously.
Maybe that's why I had a little
60s.
bit of trouble finding many reviews of this.
Well, they're too busy reviewing John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman and Money Jungle and Jackie McLean. Let Freedom Ring is an album I don't know a lot about, actually. I have to give that another listen. I know I've listened to it, but I need to dive into some Blue Note Jackie McLean,
You know what would be interesting would be, because they're always talking about 1959, the greatest year for
Is this the
jazz.
second greatest year?
Or is this, I mean, in terms of volume of greatness?
That's a lot.
This could be,
Yeah. Anyway, that's the kind of the jazz world that this album is getting released into. One of the great years ever.
A good time to have a turntable.
That's a great time to have a turntable.
Yeah.
And we're lucky that we still have this album. So that's that. What about some background on the session, Peter, the artist?
Okay, so this is always fun for me to think about the musicians and how old they were at the time, because a lot of times we will
makes us feel old.
Well, I'm just like, I'm looking at this. I've been around long enough, a little older than you, my friend, to have met many of these musicians, but normally they would be later on in their career. I never met Bill Evans, but I could have, because I was 9 years old when he passed away. But Jim Hall I did meet, and Freddie Hubbard I did meet, and got to spend a little bit of time. I actually got to,
Freddie was the youngest.
I kind of did a gig with Freddie Hubbard.
Did you really?
Yes. Yeah. It was supposed to be an extended, it's a whole story. I'll tell it another time, but I did get to play with him once. But yeah, this is but I always think about Freddie as an elder statesman, incredible player still then. I mean, this was in the, early 90s?
It's because, as we'll hear on this album, I think he was in the early 20s on this album.
He was 24.
He comes out fully baked.
As
an artist.
Right. Bill Evans was 32. Philly Joe Jones and Percy Heath, the rhythm section, were both 39. Jim Hall was 31. And Freddie Hubbard was 24. So, I mean, yeah, Freddie was the kid on the session. You would never really get that from the way it sounds. And he recorded some great stuff. I mean, he was an early bloomer. He was one of these, Clifford Brown, Wynton Marsalis, Fats Navarro. I was thinking, oh my God, he's so incredible. But Roy Hargrove, Nicholas Payton. I mean, actually, he's kind of old for playing so good now that I think about all the great trumpet players. Louis Armstrong, definitely an instrument that seems to sort of be defined by Wunderkind, as we say in the Germanic languages. Yeah. So you mentioned Undercurrent, which is the wonderful duo record with Jim Hall.
Great album.
That was recorded right after this. And supposedly it was that Orrin Keepnews, of course, legendary, Riverside and Milestones producer, impresario, that he liked this band so much that he wanted to rebook it, but the only ones that were available for the next session, which was very close by, was Jim Hall and Bill Evans, so they just did duo. I heard that story, but then I also heard that they recorded that right before, so I'm not sure. But anyway, it was right within a few months of each other.
Very interesting.
And then he had released, it looked like Bill Evans released, he was still kind of under contract with Verve, and he was still under contract with Riverside, but he released a record with Shelly Manne on Verve. They sort of let him do that as Empathy, which is a great record, 1962. And then the next year he released How My Heart Sings on Riverside, 1964. So this is right in the middle. That's great trio record. And this record was released and we'll talk about this a little bit later, this whole reissues thing, which in the 80s and then really a little bit later when the CDs came out became a big thing. I got mixed feelings about it, but this was released in 1982 as Interplay Sessions.
We might do some rants about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but they recorded, I guess, the next day and then one other day close by there with essentially the same band except for Ron Carter instead of Percy Heath and Zoot Sims.
It's funny because I feel like, and we can get into this a little bit now, but I feel like that era of let's change the packaging, let's repackage the music. Yeah. It's really just the music, right? Yeah. That's how I feel like these A&R guys at record companies were thinking in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
It's just the music, so we'll repackage it. But I think what they took for granted was how important the packaging is to everything.
Right.
But especially to music fans, like how important the cover art is to the experience, how important the liner notes are to the experience. And that like when we want a reissue, we want this, I want the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more information or some enhanced features or
photos.
I don't usually want bonus tracks unless it's maybe a separate, or at the end, maybe. And that's got to be like...
Your face just got all ugly as you were even talking about
I'm going to rant about bonus tracks because
the
Spotify release of this has a bonus track in the middle of the album.
I know.
Which is so dumb.
Right.
But
I think that was on the reissue actually too. Because there's a time when that was like, so you could compare them to each other.
I remember I bought a CD once that had 3 versions of each song. And I was just like, this is unlistenable. Like I've got to keep skipping because I want to hear the album as the artist released it. You know?
So what I do on Spotify, and I've done it with this album, a little hack for you that's pretty simple and not that technologically difficult. I make a playlist of the album and I take out the alternate track.
So the A&R people are going to make me work to make a decent piece of art.
I'll show you.
It's one step more than I want to do when I'm too lazy. I don't want to go through that.
So did we even talk about, recorded July 1962. Who's on the record? Yeah, I guess we did. Jim Hall, Percy Heath, Freddie Hubbard, Philly Joe Jones, recording in New York City, produced by Orrin Keep News. I think we should get in and listen to this bad boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll rant. And then we'll talk about how great it is. And we'll talk about the ups and downs of it.
Love it.
And it starts, as many of these great records that we examine here. Are we going to do some bad albums in this series? Or are we just going to do great albums? We've never talked about that.
Let's do some mediocre.
I don't even think we're going to do any mediocre. I mean, why? There's too many great ones. We'll hit the mediocre ones after. All right. So this is the first track, You and the Night and the Music. Oops. Let's start at the beginning of it.
Can we see the album?
So great album. We got to talk about. There's so much great stuff in. Like once we get into the solos, it's gonna be crazy, and we're gonna listen to those. But this track, I think it sets up so beautifully, and I thought we could talk just a little bit about what is about this arrangement, because this is a great tune, great standard. All the tunes on here except one are standards.
Yep.
But the arrangement is very simple. Both the official arrangement, which I'm assuming Bill Evans did, I'm sure he did. With this counter melody from Jim Hall and nice little harmony between Freddie Hubbard and Jim Hall when they get to the bridge. But there's also the arrangement and the little details that Philly Joe Jones puts in, and it really feels like, I know they did multiple takes on some of these, obviously, because they've released some of them, but this feels so like, you can almost feel Philly Joe Jones like kind of getting the tune in the way they're going to play it and then saying, okay, I'm going to set it up. I'm not going to tell anybody what it is. I'm just going to show it to them. I'm going to lay it out for them.
He's Philly Joe. He's a master orchestrator.
Okay.
He really is.
He really is, yeah. So I think with that lens, let's listen to this again and see the little details. First, this is just such a simple, cool way to start the record.
So those little trems from Bill, listen to them again because they're in time.
Yeah. No,
Bill's trems are always in time.
They are. And this is really simple stuff he's playing, but he's pulsing. Yep. And then the way Philly Joe Jones going.
So that's that fourth thing, right? All throughout the sort of minor harmony going back.
Right. So
Tad Dameron-ish. Kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah. So there already, Philly Joe, right as they're going back to the second A, I'm going to point it out again. Check out what he does with that little... that little tag going up. Sets it up. Woo! And then when he goes, of course, over to the... And he doesn't just go like on one. He's like traveling over there. Back to the hi-hat.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all the people want.
And here. Jones might be getting an award.
We're going to talk about those. Dun, 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 all throughout this.
Huh.
Full tone?
Jim Hall's comping is so perfect and sparse on here. Super sparse. Are they swinging?
Lots of Bill-isms in this already.
Okay, but like that line right there. Has Bill Evans, I mean, I know like this is all, you could recognize this as Bill Evans, but like, is he ever swinging as hard as he is right here? Maybe equaling this. Is he ever swinging harder than this?
Give me an example.
Check it out. This quarter note line after this. Like that. I mean, just simple. Like, because to me, it's always like, if you can play something really simple that with quarter notes in this kind of time and it's swinging, that's not the easiest thing to do. Yeah. It's one thing to be like, you know.
Is that swinging?
Exactly. You know, you know, I don't know. I like it. Billy Joe Jones, busy AF in the right ways. And Bill Evans is kind of a perfectly executed solo. Like there's no mistakes in it, you know, there's no flubs. This line right here. Kind of pushes. Foreshadowing into an out-of-tune piano. Now this. Okay, so that so like
ridiculous,
like just show up
it's
on the
so good.
to show up in the solo break with that. Come on now.
Yeah.
I mean, like the confidence of the swag.
Dude.
Is that swagalicious? I don't know. It should be. Do we have a swagometer? We need a swagometer for that. But okay, so let's just talk about this break too, because this is kind of cool. Like it's just moving in the circle of force up these dominant F sharp B. It's like almost like that thing, but extended out. But the rhythm of it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. But the little details, and they're different each time that Philly Joe, like the way that he sets it up, it's almost like a big band drummer.
Yeah.
And sometimes he does nothing, but like the confidence of the beat, and like we know as players, like when a drummer does that, whether they're going to play it, I always think about Greg Hutchinson, shout out Greg, he's going to show up later in this episode, but like he's got that ability to either play something or not play something. So you have the element of surprise in terms of the setup, but you've got the stability. Like some drummers play setups because they need them to be able to like really feel the groove when there's not something happening if they're not playing. But great drummers, you know, are able to either play it or not, pull it. It's like you're pulling the rug. You're not pulling it out from the soloist. You're like pulling and say, come over here. Let's go over here. I'm going to pull you with it. And it's very exciting, you know?
Well, and the grounding part of that too is Percy Heath on the fundamental just being rock solid.
Yes.
I mean, Philly Joe and Percy Heath is dream team right there.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So this is the end of the solo. We're going to check out Freddie's just swagging. And Philly doesn't go one. It's like, this is kind of a perfect solo, perfectly executed solo. Sparse, great Bill Evans comping on this.
incredible musicianship, swing. The composition of the lines is so beautiful.
The way they're trading off with the comp is great too. Check out. Well, I guess it's all comp. Billy Joel never lets up, man. It's like, hold up. Man, that
he's just totally just tipping until he's not, and then he's destroying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's like that pull the rug. Like when you establish the groove and the swing with that much swag in terms of the rhythm section, and I'm glad you mentioned Percy Heath. We can't forget about like that.
It's
like
relentless.
But when you have it established like that, you can do crazy shit like that.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? I mean, like that's like it sounds like the drums fell over, or whatever. But it's so interesting and exciting, and it's a setup going into the bridge.
Yeah.
But it's like a preset because it doesn't go right to. It's not like bang. It's nothing like that. It's like
well, and that first chorus, maybe even the second chorus too. He's just locked in. He's just riding the ride. He's in the pocket.
Yeah.
And then that you can tell on this chorus, he's like, I'm gonna take a
I'm gonna
gear
get obtrusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get in there.
Yeah, I took it back. He's aggressive. Oh, so interesting. I mean, him giving a lot of space, really.
The sound from Jim Hall.
Playing with that minor six.
Nice.
Jim Hallisms. He's like a beautiful, soothing throat line.
Listen to how he's gonna use range. So he stayed low.
Right. He's all tenory.
This second chorus, he's gonna start going up in the soprano. Kind of hanging up further at the neck.
Yeah. This thing I love Bill Evans comping, and that's what you don't get as much with a trio. You know, that's kind of comping behind a horn player or guitar. I love this little solo. After all that stuff, he's like, no, I'm good. I'm good.
The best. He's the best.
So, this is the same, but I think like all great opening tracks, we're gonna listen to the end, even though it's the same that's coming in because of how they end at the last chord. I think it's brilliant. Because it's already a chord break, but you can just take it out, right? Check it out. Unless we get one more solo break, which is great.
It's a great ending.
It's just such an interesting way because they could have just boo 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 baby and ended it there, but they went back to you know they did and did all that stuff and then that
so good, man, so good. And
you'll hear it
on Bill's solo, which I know we'll hear plenty of
as
the album goes on. But what you hear is like you hear a couple of Bill Evans's.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing the sort of like breaking off of like he wasn't doing the sort of playing off of one, but he did do a few times that sort of like
Yeah.
like these quarter note triplets. That's a sound that you're going to hear from Bill a lot.
Yep.
And then the sort of like, these kind of like descending, sending, I guess those are triplets too, but there's like, and then we even heard like a little bit of like one of those flares.
Yep. Right
before that swinging line that you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of his little like
Maybe
rushes
we'll come
up.
back to this. Got a little for you to like.
It's my altered scale.
But his execution level, very high on this solo.
Yes.
Like there's almost like you always think when you listen to something like this over and over, if it's interesting enough to want to listen to it, I think, an improvised solo, because we always think about like, well, a solo that you hear live, it's like a one-time only event. And so on a studio record, it's like you're capturing that, or a live record, and you would think, oh, it wouldn't be that interesting, but well crafted, to listen to over and over again. But when they're well crafted like this, and you can hear all these different things, and if you listen to it enough, I start thinking that I kind of know what he's going for. I'm never sure. I mean, for everybody, it's not just like, oh, I'm a pianist or whatever, for anybody playing. And sometimes it can be very exciting. And I think of certain things that Miles Davis would play where he'd like almost hit it, and then he'd get like, he's executing on the macro level in terms of the story, obviously master musical storyteller, Miles Davis, but sometimes just technically you can hear he's not quite executing what he's going for, but then he goes for it again, which is super interesting. This solo, and Bill Evans does that sometimes, but this solo to me is just super interesting because it's like everything he tries to do, he just does it and does it well. But I think in a lot of ways, everybody's kind of, like that's sort of Freddie Hubbard's thing, especially during this period, pretty much all the, pretty much
the whole
always.
period.
Yeah. He was a master. Like everybody on here is really good at executing. And then Philly Joe Jones being kind of that constant, like he's almost like a prod, like he's the one in the group that's like, come on. But because he's playing so well, he's comping so well, Jim Hall, Bill Evans giving him a lot of space on like that Freddie solo to really be, to give a lot of flair and finesse. And, it's really everybody's rewarded for it. So.
Cool, man. Are there any liner notes or reviews?
The liner notes, well, when we talk about the accoutrements, we're going to talk about the weird, I should have found my original album because that is floating around. But there's part of the liner notes are on the cover. We'll talk about that a little later. But I do have this review from AllMusic. This is from Tom Jurek that I thought was interesting and could just sort of set things up a little bit. Interplay stands as some of Bill Evans' most enigmatic and unusual music in makeup as well as execution. It was recorded in July 1962 with a very young Freddie Hubbard from the Jazz Messengers. That's right. See, that's some good context. He was still playing with the, I guess he, well, he was either just coming out of there, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. Guitarist Jim Hall, bassist Percy Heath, and drummer Philly Joe Jones performing 5 veteran standards. Evans has a more blues-based approach to his playing, harder, edgier, and in full flow, fueled in no small part by Hall, who is at his very best here, swinging harder, whether it be a ballad or an up-tempo number. Hubbard's playing, on the other hand, was never so restrained as it was here. I'm not sure if I totally agree with that, but using a mute most of the time, his lyricism is revealed to jazz listeners for the first time. With Art Blakey, it was a blistering attack of hard bop aggression. On this program of standards, however, Hubbard slips into them quite naturally without the burden of history. Check his reading and improvisation on When You Wish Upon a Star. Ironically, it's on the sole original, the title track, where the band, in all its restrained swinging power, can be heard best. Though the rest is striking, finger-popping hard bop jazz with stellar crystalline beauty in the ballads.
Oh, man. That's beautiful. Well, that takes us to our bangers, and maybe we could check out, I think no, this is not the sleeper banger. We're going to say for my banger, Peter.
Yep.
Maybe
you calling it audible?
Well, no. And I know this is your banger for a solo, but let's check out the title track of Interplay, because I think this might be besides You and the Night and the Music. Sorry, producer Caleb. The coffee on the table. Besides You and the Night and the Music, which I think is the the winner of the album track wise.
Yeah.
That opening track is magnificent.
It's magnificent.
But I think Interplay is in the running for the, maybe the second greatest track. And I know we have a bit of Bill's solo transcription for our YouTube folks here, but maybe we can just listen to the track first and then we can check out Bill's solo.
Cool. It's interesting that you talk about those two, because that would be our Spotify bangers in terms of number of plays. Those are the two highest.
The people know, they know.
You and the Night of the
They're
Music.
smart.
Yeah. It's also the first track and the title track, so it could just be people randomly clicking. Here's Interplay.
minor blues.
Yeah.
Man, Percy and Billy Jordan.
Hooking there, locked in. Jim Hall, man, it was such like a patient way he got to this point of the solo.
Great
You know
solo.
what I mean?
He's playing so
Like he's playing the long game.
Oh.
He's playing the long game.
It's incredible
It's a long
play.
solo too.
By
It's
everybody.
hard to solo.
Great comping by Bill Evans.
Okay, so we're gonna switch over because we can actually look at a little transcription that would be interesting on this solo coming up with Bill Evans. But yeah, so it's a minor blues, but you don't really know it's a minor blues until this solo starts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then even there, they kind of ease their way in. So like that's a very interesting way. It's almost coming out of this, you know, there's all this counterpoint going on over the melody. It's in two feel, obviously. There's the hinting at the groove and that they're going to go to. It certainly sets, it's not like, what? What's going on? It makes sense when it goes into it. And then I thought there's some just masterful stuff that everybody's doing. But Percy Heath at the beginning, when he's just doom, 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 I think he's up here. When he starts walking, he stays on that F for a long time, which really heightens things. And then Jim Hall plays off that grade. A lot of cool. This is almost like let's play a minor blues at a jam session and just, the guitarist is playing too many choruses. Like this is everything that's going right with playing too many choruses.
It's a great sounding album too. Sound is so good on this one. Yeah.
Yeah. So should we look at a little bit of...
Yeah, let's check out Bill's solo transcription.
Can we pull up the transcription here? And we'll see... boom, there we go. Piano is out of tune.
Piano's not in tune.
Okay, would you call that is that a Bill Evans-ish kind of line there?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Okay.
I don't know if I would call that a G flat major 7, but yeah, that's kind of a Bill Evans.
I think Percy Heath outlines that a couple of times. Yeah, I was wondering if that
you think a dominant 7.
But I think it's
is it
not
major?
what Bill Evans is playing there, but like check out Percy Heath. Well, he's just playing to try it. But then he goes on other ones. They do play major, but
okay, so this is very Bill Evans phrasing here on this. This.
yeah,
that whole. Right, and to end before the downbeat, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to pick it back up. That's a very Bill way to phrase rhythmically. The da-ba-dot he's done on so many recordings.
Yeah, that doobie-doo.
Yep.
And then what that sets you up for nice little blues run coming out, going into that D flat. Let's go back in here. Woo, that's a nice sliding between the 60s to the triplets. Nice stuff there.
Yeah, nice
stuff. Cool.
Pretty good. So for my, let's see what you had for your banger track, You and the Night and the Music, which I agree is the banger.
Yeah.
We have Bill's solo on Interplay as your solo. I had for my banger solo, Freddie's solo on You and the Night and the Music, which you've already heard.
I have a little bit of transcription on that if you want to check it.
I would love to check it.
Okay, let's check it. Boom, this is fun.
Shout out to Ryan Kerwin.
Okay, so you know how you were saying how, like, Bill Evans, to end the bib-a-dump on that fourth beat is a thing.
Yeah.
This is very much a Freddie thing to end on. Baby-dooba-dooba-dooba-dooba, like on that, on the upbeat of the 2, right?
This thing here.
Yeah, at that last bar. Let's see. This whole long phrase. Booba-dooba.
Yeah.
Dooba-dooba-dooba. Whole tone. Oh, I love it. Okay, he just repeated 4 times. Yeah, that's trumpet pitch. You know what? And it didn't seem like too many. Second beat again, right? Oh, that's third beat. Still good. Anyway, we listened to this already, but it's just great. You see it, you hear it. Like Freddie's just like, I love it when he does stuff. Like he's one of those players that would just do stuff when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. But that's that swag that's put on there, that phrasing that's hard to capture.
The king
in just the notes.
The king.
Yeah.
My banger for the track, it might be a little sleeper of "I'll Never Sleep Again." Can we hear a little bit of that?
Yeah.
Here?
Boom, boom, boom.
By the way, the first take. Is on
of
there.
course. This actually takes 7.
Not the bonus take.
Their decision. It's a good decision. That was such a cool thing with the solo break. Freddie playing it, the fake out, right? You know. Lines on this album, my friend. All right, I gotta agree with you. This is a great.
It's a great track.
It's a great.
Yeah.
The whole album is just really killing. The sequencing is great of it because I think the spirit, and I love this. I think this was recorded in one day. I saw conflicting things, but it sounds like if they did in 2 days or one, like it feels like a record.
Well, everybody's putting out 3 albums a year.
They must
in 1963, so you got to do.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like the spirit of it, obviously that's all swinging and stuff. But even like that interplay, so it's all standards, 6 tunes, all standards except the one interplay, which really is in danger of being like a, huh? You know, like it's kind of a weird minor-y blues.
But because it's a minor blues, it kind of gets away with all of that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and I think just the vibe of the session, the sound, like there's an advantage to recording everything when the sound is great, of course. The piano's out of tune. Like you can even feel it getting out of tune on different tracks and stuff. But it's a session. You know, it's a session.
Can you play a little bit another sleeper jam on this as you go to my head? This is this is an underrated tune. First of all, it's such a great tune.
And I mean, normally I love it just as a ballad, but the way they do it here is great. Little Giant Steps intro. You think it's going to be a ballad. No, Philly Joe has other thoughts.
You know what? This whole album is full of these like major minor modal interchange tunes.
Yes,
you know,
that's right.
Have major minor tonics.
Yeah.
You'll love that, I think.
You and the Night of Music. There you get a little bit of this trio since you love it so much, Adam.
This would have been an interesting trio, Philly Joe
and
Jersey Heath, Bill Evans.
They played it correct with a big standard last day.
Jim Hall getting a lot of the first solos.
I know,
So.
but you know what's great about this too? Like I can almost remember we were talking about when I was saying like I feel like I know after listening to this record a lot or any record a lot what a soloist is going for. I kind of feel like I know how this tunes arrangement came about, where they're like, well, let's not play down, and Bill Evans or whoever was like, all right, Freddie, you take the, he put together that little intro, probably just whatever, came up with the chords, and then Philly set up the time, and then Freddie takes the first solo, and then Bill's like, I'll take the bridge. Jim, you get the head going out, and then it's like it's very like it could be very formulaic.
Oh, let's fake him out like it's gonna be a ballad at the beginning. Yeah.
But it's just like because it's so well done, it's like, oh, this is great. And then Philly Joe, I think, is the one who's kind of pulling it all together with that orchestration, which makes it feel like something they thought about for many weeks before the session.
Well, this takes us, speaking of Philly Joe, and maybe some more superlatives, Peter. So some categories. Before we get into the categories, just want to remind you all that this podcast is sponsored by Open Studio. Go to openstudiojazz.com for all of your jazz lesson needs. Yes, Peter.
Yes. No, it's just
categories. Over underdog. Who's overrated? Who's underrated? What's overrated? What's underrated? Peter, what do you got?
Well, I think this whole record's underrated, first of all.
I agree.
Obviously, I started this damn thing out saying that I think it's his greatest record. That might be hyperbole. That might be totally subjective. But I think the album's underrated because I just don't hear it talked about a lot. Is it the greatest jazz album of all time? No. Is it as swinging as any jazz album from 1963? I thought
there's
so.
A lot
but then when I heard, is it even the best? Is it even in the top 10 of 1963? Maybe not.
Not according to the bestalbums.org or whatever that was.
Well, no, I mean, just the fact that, Duke Ellington and John Coltrane, I mean, those are some great albums. But I mean, I think this holds up as one of the more interesting and slightly unusual Bill Evans. I mean,
it's an unusual Bill Evans.
It's a little bit unusual, although everything he's doing on here is like, yeah, that's Bill Evans. It's just an unusual situation. I think great artists, the same way like Duke Ellington, Money Jungle with Mingus and Max.
That's a weird album.
That's a weird album and a weird placement, but I love that, like Duke Ellington in that situation.
Yeah.
So
we just listened to Money Jungle a few weeks ago at our listening sesh.
Yeah.
And I've always loved that album, and I've been listening to it since I'm a teenager. But as I get older and have heard more and more music, I'm like, this is weird.
It's a weird record.
It's a weird record. Like, you got Mingus just kind of like dropping bombs, exploding all over.
Session, man.
Duke is just trying to swing. Max Roach is always swinging, but like, we should maybe consider doing that one eventually because it's a strange album.
It'd be hard because
it's beautiful, but it's strange.
It is, but is it over? It's both overrated and underrated.
I think it sounds kind of bad.
Yeah,
like the sound quality is not great, and yet it's haunting somehow. It's a very weird experience.
It's weird. It's super interesting. It's not a record that I would say, oh, hand to somebody, this is your first jazz album to listen to.
Yeah, that would turn them off to jazz forever. But yeah,
although there's some beautiful
it would hook them for life, depending on the kind of person.
But this record, I think, would be an interesting thing to like give to someone. Oh, I've never heard jazz, or I want to hear. I mean, obviously, you can give them Kind of Blue. Oh, that's newsflash, Kind of Blue. People like it, but I mean, this is kind of a different. Like, if you wanted just to some really swinging stuff. I mean, look, Hub Tones, that was the same year. That's a great. I mean, you can't say like, oh, this is better Freddie playing, but it doesn't get any better than this.
Underrated. Is Riverside's cover art in general underrated? Blue Note gets all the love. Yeah, Riverside has some good covers.
I think they have some good covers. I don't think this is one of them. Can we look at it again though?
Is this cover overrated?
It's not overrated because it's not really.
You don't
rated.
like conceptual cover art?
I like the bottom half of it. I just having like the liner notes.
That's weird.
The beginning of it at the top, like I like the Interplay, the Bill Evans, like that offset, and I love the stuff, the conceptual stuff at the bottom. Although it's a little bit like Ozark, the intro to Ozark when to each of the segments of the show Ozark. Yeah. It's fine. I would say it's just rated.
It's rated.
But conceptual cover art in general is underrated. I agree. And if it had been just the bottom half, obviously you can't just make it big and make it work. But I do like it's evocative of the time period, I guess. It's interesting. It's fine.
So I'm thinking about the Riverside, especially like the Monk, the Brilliant Corners album, where he's like mirrored.
Yeah, Riverside has some great stuff.
I'm thinking about Monk's music, where he's in that radio flyer wagon. I'm thinking about some of those kinds of things.
Oh, fantastic!
And they do have I'm looking through their catalog now. They do have just like Abby Lincoln with a picture of Abby Lincoln smiling.
I will tell you something that's overrated on this album.
What's that?
the piano tuning or lack thereof.
The piano tuning. The Chet Baker, Chet, where he's just got that lady leaning on his back that we borrowed
You have a little
for
bit of personal
one of our
experience
videos the other week. Yeah. No, the piano tuning is...
It's not good.
It's not
It's
great.
not existent. I mean, it was done at some point, but not in an appropriate manner for the session.
I agree.
What else do you have? Oh, we were talking. You mentioned earlier overrated. You had a problem, and I was saying
Bonus tracks. And I can save this for rants too, but I think the bonus track on this specific release is overrated. You don't need it.
And really just reissues in general. I know there's some interesting stuff on the reissue. It just becomes something else. How about not reissue it? Well, I mean, you can reissue it when you have a new format.
I mean,
but to change it and add a bunch of stuff.
There are levels to reissues. There are some reissues where, especially if it's like an iconic album, they'll reissue it with, some additional reviews and liner notes and behind the scenes photos.
That's great.
And like as like a box set or a collector's edition.
Yeah.
And those are really cool. And then maybe you might get a remaster, which can be hit or miss depending on what era it was remastered.
Right.
I think modern remasters are pretty decent. Like I'm talking about the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Like they
can be.
They can be.
Yeah.
I think
but are they needed always?
90s digital remasters can be hit or miss for sure.
Yeah.
And I think then there's like the money grab reissue where they just slap like what essentially looks like a stock photo of the artist somehow. And like they put in, all of the alternate takes in like so that it's like, Interplay, take 1, take 6, take 5, take 2. Like they put them all together. So you have these like massive, this was mainly done in the late 80s, early 90s. There were all these horrible reissues.
Right. It was just
sometimes
a way to
the
get
remastering
more CDs out there.
Yeah, they were just trying to get CDs out, or someone would buy a defunct record label or the catalog of a defunct record label and try to press it, or they'd press it in another country. Those can get really annoying.
Oh, those aren't reissues. Those are pirated versions.
Bootlegs. Yeah, there's
bootlegs,
bootleg. That's a level below the money grab reissue. Yeah, I think for any reissue, I want to see like respect for the album. There's a reason you're reissuing it. It's because people want it.
Respect the tradition.
Respect the tradition. It's 40, 50, 60. In this case, this album is, this album is 60 years old.
Yeah, 60 years old.
And like, respect that people still want to listen to it, reissue it with the love and care, and people will buy it, or people will, no one will buy it now. But
they will. Think about what is selling of this. You could spend $45, I bet, on this to get an actual
a beautiful remastered vinyl.
Yeah, I would totally, and that's the only thing that's selling.
And
but think
with
about
the original cover art and maybe an inserted
extra
booklet or something. Yeah, I'd love that.
But no extra music. But that's what's selling.
Maybe
which is actually great.
I mean, if you want to do extra music on a different disc, I'm okay with that, but I don't want to pay $90 for it either.
Well, and I think it begs the question too: does this record need to be remixed? It can't be remixed, but remastered. Does it need a different cover? I know I was talking about the cover, but the cover is great. Like, change something if it needs to be changed.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole point we're talking about, and some records are just not great. Don't salvage them. But I mean, if it's already a complete musical statement, just keep it available and keep on moving.
Okay, Apex Mountains. Is this Bill Evans?
I know what you're gonna say.
Swinging Apex Mountain?
I knew you were gonna. I could tell by you a little bit trepidation.
Is this Bill Evans tipping Apex Mountain? Bill Evans will never tip again.
No, I mean, I think so, because the Apex, you can go to the Apex several times.
I'm going to disagree, man. I think Bill Evans tipping is 1958. I think in the Miles Davis,
like Live at the Plaza
quintet. I think that's as good as it gets.
But this is just as good, I think. Oh, wow.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. I mean, Apex Mountain, can we revisit an Apex, or is it just one time one goes?
I mean, it's the Apex. So you can have multiple hills for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes. That's fine. We can't agree on everything. We can't always be right. In this case, only I can.
But I think Bill is one of these artists, though. If we talk about just Bill Evans, Apex Mountain, I think this is just past probably his apex as far as like the power that he is in his career. He had so much to do with the sound and the tone of Kinda Blue, which is one of the most incredible, renowned jazz albums of all the time. His fingerprints are definitely all over that album. And then coming out of that, he had this period with Portrait, like the 60, 61, 62, Scalafaro, Portrait in Jazz, Sunday at the Village Vanguard, recorded on the same session.
Yeah.
Waltz for Debbie, recorded in that same period.
Crazy.
Like all of these things happening that were really a creative peak. Now, he went on to make great music for the rest of his life. He, of course, tragically died when he was 50 years old.
Yeah.
And had, tons of issues on the way to that
Yeah.
early, sadly early death. But made good music through the 60s, through the 70s. Had
other great trios too. Later
great
in the
trios,
70s,
other
live at
great
Montreux.
collaborations with vocalists and other musicians. And so, but I think this was just past maybe his apex for his Apex Mountain.
Well, I would agree in terms of like Bill Evans, maybe the apex mountain of his creative output was that 59, 60, 61, 50, you know, like, especially with his trio.
59 to 62, probably.
Yeah. But apex mountain, I would say specifically for Bill Evans swinging his ass off, I would say is at this. And he's not, I mean, look, he's a swinging pianist, but he's not known as like
he's not
Oscar
known as the
Peterson or
swingingest
Wynton
pianist,
Kelly.
yeah.
And so
He's got a different texture.
Yeah.
Here's something that I
Okay.
pose to you, Peter.
Yes.
Could you make a point that we just saw 1963, Freddie Hubbard, he's a young man,
Yeah.
but he's in Art Blakey's band.
Yeah.
He releases Hubtones. He's
Yeah.
on this album.
Yeah.
Is this Freddie's apex? A young Freddie? Does he,
could be.
Is this his
The year?
Yeah.
But so he was on a downswing after this?
That's,
Because
well,
when you're at the apex, I think it might have been the beginning. Well, no, because he'd done some great stuff the year before.
I mean, I think,
too.
of course, CTI, of course,
Yeah.
that whole thing, he
Yeah.
does amazing
He
albums.
had some.
Every long-term artist who's around for a while is going to have some peaks and valleys, but this is a pretty high peak for Freddie,
Maybe the
even though
beginning
he's
of the
young. This is
apex.
it's definitely his first peak.
Yeah.
And this might be his highest even.
Could be.
Yeah.
What about, is this Apex Mountain? I'm going to throw a crazy one out there.
Okay.
Apex Mountain for piano, effective piano and guitar comping throughout an album. So including when you're playing together as compers,
Yeah.
when you're making a decision who's going to comp, and when you're going to make a decision when nobody's going to comp.
It's hard. I'm trying to think about other albums that have piano and guitar that aren't just,
Freedom in the Groove.
well, Freedom of the Groove. Oh, that's one you're
Peter
on.
Bernstein.
You and Peter Martin,
Yeah.
little double Peter connection.
Yeah.
Peter Martin, Peter Bernstein.
Yeah, we did some trading off, but this is better.
That's you're kind of slightly joking because you're on that record, but there's a case to be made for that. You and Peter Bernstein have a great vibe
no,
together.
that's not why I said, okay, fine.
No, that's a good point. We should actually listen to Freedom in the Groove.
No,
Put
but
in
some
the
of my
comments
concepts,
if you would listen to Freedom in the Groove, because it's a great album. That's a classic album that you happen to be on, but that you had nothing to do. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you and Peter Bernstein, I think that's a good case. I can't think of another album, and please put in the comments. I'm sure there's lots of albums with piano and guitar where they're comping for other people and intermixing, but there's not a ton. It's usually like the Oscar Peterson trio. You got Herb Ellis and Oscar
Right.
Peterson, Ray Brown. The comping on that is obviously great, but they're often
not comping
comping for each
behind.
other.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you have duo albums. I think Bill Evans and Jim Holland, Undercurrent,
yeah.
incredible.
but they're not comping. They're not making decisions about
Again,
who's going to comp.
comping for
when.
each other. And
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm missing plenty of great examples, but put in the comments what you think.
And then the only other thing I was thinking for Apex Mountain is a ridiculous one, but Philly Joe Jones just swinging his ass off. Is this Apex Mountain?
No,
Because he always did that.
I think he always did, and I think he's on better albums where he's swinging.
Ooh, shots fired.
Yeah.
I like it.
Is it Apex Mountain for Riverside Records?
Yeah. I mean, there's just too many great Riverside
I know.
records to say that.
How about some awards, Peter? The Oscar Peterson Award for Overplaying goes to...
I mean, I got to say Philly Joe Jones because he's busy. And again,
He's busy AF.
This is a beautiful award. This is a respectful award. We use the word overplaying in conjunction with Oscar Peterson, the master of the artful overplaying. So
I was going to nominate Jim Hall, not because he's stepping on anybody's toes, but he's got the first solo on like 3 of these 5 tracks.
well, that's not. Yeah, that's true.
And
then
he's
he
a
does have
great
some long
soloist,
solos,
and they're
too.
long solos. You got Bill Evans, whose album it is, and you got Freddie Hubbard, arguably the greatest soloist of the year.
I know.
And like Jim Hall's kicking. I love Jim Hall, but like,
But I think because I got to give it to Philly Joe over Jim Hall because Jim Hall shows a lot of restraint at other times in terms of his comping.
He's a
and stuff.
tasty musician. There's no doubt
Philly
about
Joe's
it.
just constantly overplaying in all the right ways.
the right
I'm
ways.
so glad he did.
The John Coltrane Theft Award. Who stole this album?
Philly Joe Jones.
I might.
Or Freddie.
I think Freddie might have
Okay.
stole it. I think
Yeah.
Freddie might have stole it. The Cecil Taylor Taking It Out Award.
I mean, I probably Freddie Hubbard. because
so.
like there's not a lot
Nobody's
of
taking it out,
outplay.
really.
Yeah. I mean, Interplay is kind of weird a little bit. It's not really out. And like the way that they're playing over the blues is very like that's the only time they kind of dab their toe in a little bit of so-called modal playing, which is weird because we're coming out of supposedly the modal period and all that.
You could argue Philly's taking it out.
He takes it actually with that, dropping the weird
moments.
bombs. Yeah. So Philly gets all the awards.
He was in a mood, Philly, that day. You can tell. A new category, new award, MVP. Who won the album?
Ooh, winner.
Who's the winner? Of the album?
Chicken. Well, I mean, I think Bill Evans because it's his album wins, but in terms of playing or who gets the benefits,
I think Freddie comes out the winner. I think he is the one who shines the hardest, the brightest.
I mean, he's a trumpet player. And he's
but
playing his ass off.
Playing is so brilliant on this whole album. They're all playing the same standards, and he makes them shine so hard.
You might be right. I would just say that's primarily a product of the trumpet. Like if everything else is equal, and you can make an argument that, like, you can't say that Freddie Hubbard is playing any better relative to his very high level skills than Philly Joe Jones is in relation. Like you maybe couldn't say this is either one of their greatest playing, but it's like at 98%. It's like, in other words, like Freddie is who we thought he was on this, but Philly Joe is who we thought he was. And Bill Evans, everybody, Percy Heath, I think because it's trumpet, if everything else is equal and everybody's killing it, the trumpet's going to come out on top.
Right. First call subs for piano. I think it would be interesting to hear this album with Wynton Kelly. That would be awesome.
He would do good.
Or you have here Red Garland.
Yeah,
I think is a great choice.
Those are big influences, obviously, on Bill.
Bass.
Wait, you know what? Are we going by instrument? Okay, cool.
Herbie Hancock could be a first call sub at this time as well.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would be. Can we fly somebody in from the future?
Who you got?
How about a little Brad Mehldau? Is that too expected?
I was going to say there are some similarities. I know Brad Mehldau doesn't like to be compared to Bill Evans, but I think there are
Brad
some
Mehldau, friend of the show until today.
Well, no. But I think that like as much as Bill had his own sound with his own group, Brad has this like legendary trio sound that he made of his own thing, which is not like Bill at all, but is like his own thing. But then Brad will go and do these other albums where he's like in this different scenario. I think there is a little similarity in that. But
and I think
I think this is Wynton Kelly would come in and knock this out of the park.
Yeah. Okay. That's why you said first call. But he's another. Yeah. It would be interesting.
Bass, the maestro. Ron Carter comes up every single episode. He's on Donny Hathaway. He's on this.
I think every record could be Ron Carter. But he was on the other part of this session that they released.
Was he really?
Yeah, him and Zoot Sims. That's the only difference.
Wow. And then you'd have to say Paul Chambers. You know,
yeah, of course.
He would be a natural.
And I mean, there's a bunch of bass players. I couldn't see anybody doing it any better, though, than Heath on this. But, you know, it's great.
Drums.
Well, Jimmy Cobb would come to mind. Art Taylor.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you.
Art Taylor would be awesome.
And when I mentioned him already, I would say Greg Hutchinson would be my number one call.
Flying him in for the future.
Flying him in for the future. Just because he's so like, I could just hear him playing over this. So I'm biased because I've played with him a lot. I love his playing Sumi.
Yeah.
But I mean, like he could come in and do this. Now he has the benefit of studying Philly Joe's records and this record and like his style and everything.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't necessarily be that, it would be different. But I mean, like he would kill it pretty much as hard as Philly. And I don't say that about a lot of people.
Trumpet, so. You've got Lee Morgan, which is a weird choice, but good, I think, a good choice.
Who else could do it?
Miles?
No.
Miles could come in and crush this.
He would, it would be so different.
It would be so different.
That's a weird
never
sub.
do it in a billion years.
No one ever calls Miles a sub. Lee Morgan could actually sub, you know?
Guitar, Wes Montgomery obviously is the obvious choice. I think it would be interesting to hear Grant Green on a session like this at this time specifically would be interesting.
How about a little Peter Bernstein, since we're talking the future?
I love a little Peter Bernstein. That's great.
A lover of Jim Hall, obviously.
Joe Pass.
Joe Pass.
Would be interesting. Yeah. Okay, bespoke genre names.
All right, you go first.
I got mid-century change-up. And I call it a change-up. This is a bespoke genre just for this album. This is mid-century change-up music.
It's not mid-century pop.
It's right in mid-century. And it is a change up from Bill Evans' normal sound. Like you said, this is kind of an outlier sound for Bill Evans, a different kind of sounding record. And that's why I called it that mid-century change up.
Okay. I've got modeless swang.
That's better. That's better.
It's just funny because
modeless swang.
It's swinging, and it's. I think the lack of modality on this is.
I wouldn't put an A in it. Honestly, it doesn't really warrant an A. It's not. It's not that swinging.
How about modeless swaggy swing? That's what I wanted to do.
All
right. Accoutrements.
Yeah, the album cover we talked about, and the title is just. It's just
fine.
It's fine.
I mean, it's probably like it's the only time you can do it, and I would be kicking myself if no one had used it. And then I was like, oh, interplay, interchange. You know.
Hot takes. What do you got, Peter?
Philly Joe Jones can swing on the drums.
Hot take.
Effortlessly.
1963 was a friggin' amazing year for music.
Yes.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Bonus tracks suck. Hot
That's not
take.
a hot take. Oh, that's
a
hot
rant.
Take. Oh, rant. Hot take
Whatever.
/ rant. Yeah. I totally agree. Reissues, bonus tracks, screwing up a classic record. Like, do all that with a crappy record that needs improvement. They'll never do that because it's like, well, let's take something and, it's kind of like Beverly Hills Cop 3. Why is that out now? That's a rant for you.
Hot
Can
take.
I rant about just other things in my
Yeah.
life that I don't like?
Hot take. Here's a hot take. Pickup albums, sometimes just as good as well thought out arranged concept
Right.
albums. Sometimes way better.
It could also be a rant. Pickup albums suck. In this case, pickup albums are great.
I love a pickup album.
Yep.
Snobometer.
Snobometer. Okay. Super interested to hear what you're going to say because for me, this is tricky because, so it's Bill Evans, so the snobometer goes off the charts in a lot of ways.
Snobs love it.
He's the ultimate, a recipient of snobbiness.
I would say this is a high on the snobometer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not Bill Evans' classic trio, so that
I think
might
it kind of
push
makes
down.
it even higher for the snob.
Oh, that's true.
Like,
Ooh. So for
Peter-
me, it does. I'm a kind of weird kind
no
of snob.
offense, you are a weird snob. Like, you like some kind of mainstream things for sure.
Right.
Your favorite pianist is Herbie. It's not like some kind of little, it's like Elmo Hope or someone.
I love Elmo Hope. What
I
are
know
you
you
talking
do,
about?
but your favorite pianist is Herbie.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
But
Who's your favorite pianist?
Herbie. I'm in the same boat.
Snobometer?
Snobometer
Woo.
is
No, but
yeah.
it's like, but then when you pick, well, see, you pick Secrets, and I might pick like Possibilities or one of his more, or Joni, the Joni letters.
Snob. This
That's
guy.
a snob.
Yeah.
That's a Herbie snob
That's a
right there.
Herbie snob.
But it's an anti-snob.
Joni,
too.
I liked him way later.
Well, no, but I would direct you to my 10 greatest jazz albums of all time, which are all offbeat numbers, including this album, Interplay, which makes an appearance on there.
Yeah, I think this is high because it's a little lesser known. It's
Yeah.
not Portrait in Jazz. It's not Sunday at the Vanguard. It's not Waltz for Deppie.
Right.
Like, this is like what Swanger's like.
That's
this
right.
one, you know what I
Snobby-
mean? So
snobby
it's got-
swang-
it's
I'm a
got
snobby swanger.
It's got a snobometer rating. I think that's pretty high. Is it better than Kind of Blue?
It is not.
No, it's not.
It's in the MLB along with it.
It is, but
It's not AAA or
It's a
anything.
mid-level team if Kind of Blue is the Cardinals. Yeah, not the 2024 Cardinals, but the franchise as a whole.
As a whole. So what you're saying is there's one album, there's one team better, the Yankees of all time than the Cardinals. So you're saying KOB is the second greatest of all time.
No, they don't count.
I can't believe I just said that. I'm gonna lose all my St. Louis street cred.
American League isn't a real league. Okay, go ahead.
Right. All right. Should we listen to the final track?
Yeah, let's go out on the final track.
This one's an interesting one, and man, this was fun.
Yeah,
like
man, good
this
call.
this. Some people may view this as like, compared to the other albums that we've been doing, as like a less obvious choice, a little bit under the radar. But I think in terms of just loving, look, if you listen to it and you don't love it, you don't. But hopefully, this is turning some people on. That's always fun to have something that a lot of people haven't heard. So,
sure.
Wrap your troubles in dreams. Till next time.
You'll hear it.
Good hi-hat work there. Oh.